Welcome to Krav Life. Today we have Mr. David Kahn. How are you doing?
Hey, Paul, I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. All right, so you're pretty well known in the industry, but for the people that may not know much about you or your history, can you give us a quick rundown of how you got started in Krav Maga and how it led up to where you are right now?
Sure. Honored to do so. Thank you. Uh, I began Krav Maga the second week of law school under the great guidance of Rick Blitzstein. And
Mhm.
Rick Blitzstein was one of the first Americans to be introduced to Krav Maga, in fact, in 1977 on a kibbutz. And he met Emi directly after some kibbutzniks had seen him doing his kung fu, and they invited him to do something else, and they summarily beat him up, which is a good tradition within Krav Maga, within reason.
Yeah.
And he loved what they were doing, and he said to them, "Where'd you learn this?" And they said, "From the army." He said, "Oh." So ultimately, he was sat down before two older gentlemen, one of whom was Emi, and asked to perform. And Emi took a liking to him and
Hmm.
started training him in Krav Maga, and invited Rick, along with two other guys, the late Alan Feldman, another instructor I work with, to go to Israel and complete a 5-week instructor course. And ultimately, it was what I understood to be 3 years of Krav Maga crammed into 5 weeks. Can you
Wow.
imagine? Well, I actually can, because I ended up taking a 6-week course privately with Chaim, and I understood the output and the input. So I met Rick when I was in law school, and I stumbled on him. He had a Krav Maga T-shirt on. I'd actually just come back from Israel doing a technology recruiting trip for the company I was working with, but I'd never heard of Krav Maga. And I said, "What is that?" Because he had Israeli martial arts in his shirt, and he said, "Oh, it's a form of hand-to-hand combat." I said,
Hmm.
"Wow," because I'd always been interested in learning some form of self-defense. The only self-defense I had at that point, as I indicated, was running into somebody full speed with my head, playing football. I did play football in college,
Nice.
and I knew there had to be a better way. So um, I was intrigued, and I deferred at first, saying that I had to study. I had to study. I was a first-year law student, and 1 week of law school disabused me of any notion law school was going to be interesting or fun. And I said, "Where is that guy? Let me look him up." And so one of the first classes that I went to, I got a real education in Krav Maga by example. Rick was picking volunteers, and he volunteered me, as I do with my students. It's a tradition. They do with their students. And I ended up in a Cavalier 1, which is a wrist lock, going
Hmm.
to the ground with his foot on my face, size 8.5
Nice.
secret, right on my face. And I looked up. I was extended out, looking up, and he said to me, "Hey, welcome to Krav Maga." I should have been embarrassed. I should have thought, "What just happened to me?" And I did, but in a positive way, and said, "This is for me. I got to learn this." And
Yeah.
that's how I embarked on the odyssey of training with him privately for 3 years. I met Alan Feldman while I was back up in New Jersey. He taught in Philadelphia at the time.
Hmm.
Rick and Alan were very good friends. Alan passed recently. In fact, I was lucky enough to dedicate the newest book to Alan. And Rick knew that I wanted to learn as much as I could, and he put me in touch with the original Israeli Krav Maga Association, founded in 1978, 1 year after Rick met Emi, by Emi and his
Hmm.
senior instructors, which is now headed by Grandmaster Gidon since Emi's passing in 1998. And Chaim is the highest ranked Krav Maga instructor in the world, directly from Emi. And in honor of Chaim's contributions, the IKMA voted to call it the Israeli Krav Maga Association Gidon system after Grandmaster Gidon. And Chaim has absolutely changed the way Krav Maga is understood, developed, and taught by those who really have a professional appreciation for what actual conflict means, and the ability to defend oneself in any situation.
So you said like he's changed the like how it's understood, and can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. And it all comes down to basic movements, which
Hmm.
Emi emphasized. You've got to understand combatives. You've got to understand to use your maximum offensive capability to defend yourself and take somebody down very quickly, because you never know how many people you're going to face. And there are also legal complications if you keep beating somebody.
Hmm.
So Hayam emphasized combatives, from kicks to punches to elbows to monofim, which are locks, takedowns, karka, which is a ground, all aspects of it. Now, until Hayam started to add to the system, Krav Maga had a very limited ground curriculum.
Right.
And Chaim understood this to begin with, and he also understood in the 1990s where he was exposed to Sambo and BJJ and realized that Krav Maga had to adapt. Several people had visited his school in Israel. Standing, the Israelis did what they do best and against weaponry. But the ground, they didn't lose, but they also didn't prevail. And Chaim realized there were some tactics that needed to be addressed and added. It's important to note that much of the Krav Maga out there has added BJJ, which in its own is great, but it has a sporting aspect. There's definitely a self-defense aspect of it. I'm part of the American Judo Association, USJA, I'm sorry, United States Judo Association. I should know that. And I was given a 5th degree in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu for the way we do what we do. And again, that's a combat form, no rules. And you just can't take something and adapt it to Krav Maga without the proper mindset. You know, everything we do standing, we try to do on the ground and vice versa, I suppose. But, you know, the no rules applications have got to go, and it's got to be simple because you can't be on the ground. Emi knew this because Krav Maga was developed against multiple opponents. It was always multiple opponents. So if you end up on the ground for, you know, an extended length of time or trying to do what you do best, you've got people shanking you, kicking you, perhaps even putting a bullet in the back of your head. So it's not to diminish BJJ or any of the great ground systems out there, but this was developed in a fighting context. So you got to know how to defend yourself on the ground. You got to know how to do what to break limbs, to choke, to everything you got to do. But you know how to get up off the ground first and foremost, not to be taken down.
Get back to your feet and get out of there as quickly as possible. And so, at which point did you decide, hey, I think I should write a book?
Yeah, well, it all started with the generosity of Chaim and his instructors. Yoav Crane, Ego Arbiv, people who trained me, Ohad Gidon, frankly, this the best practitioner I'll ever know, Chaim's son, 6th Dan, helping me develop a curriculum in English. And every lesson that I went home, Yoav was particularly emphatic about write down what you did that day. So that's the way I began to develop the curriculum, the translation of it. And I was also afforded the opportunity to get access to the IKMA curriculum. And from that began the books. From that evolved any number of books. Right now I've got 7, and an 8th is also very much on the way, nearly completed, on Weapons Offense 2, which will focus on some variations and some other aspects of weapon defenses that we did not cover in the 3rd book, which we put out.
Nice. And yep. And so you do you have your own studio, or you teach out of the studio?
Yeah, we have our own studios. I have great partners in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, Don and Ronaldo. Couldn't ask for better partners. And I've got a studio in Hamilton, New Jersey, closer to where I live. And I've got great instructors there help me out. Mike Delhanty, Paul Carlene, Het Hetman, I got to say it all. Jeff Gordman, Frank Gallucci, you Mike Osgood, all these great people. John Papp. So that's my instructional team. They help me out all the time, whether it's demonstrating. I'm just recovering from left shoulder surgery right now, so I've really prevailed on their teaching, and I've had some surgeries in the past, so I got to get back in shape and do our thing. But yeah, you as a studio owner know how important it is to have help, really good instructors under your helm.
Yes. So I know your Cherry Hill location, that studio is on our directory, because we do have a directory of Krav Maga studios.
Very good.
And we actually do want to build it we want to catalog every Krav Maga studio in the world.
Oh, that would be impressive.
Yeah.
How many are there in your estimation now?
Well, we're still building it out. We're relying on studio owners to submit their own information, because there's a lot of studios that are closed.
Yeah.
Right. So I know all the locations. I just don't know them if they're all open. But there's a couple thousand, at least I know.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah, it's harder to get some of them in other parts of the world, but we've got them. The main countries that have been contributing are the U.S.,
Mhm.
South Africa, the UK. We've even got one in Turkey, which I found weird, but anyway. Um, Australia. We've got them all over the place.
Yeah, UK.
But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
the
Yeah, no,
UK.
I've been lucky.
There's a lot in the
I've
UK.
been teaching. The farthest place I've had to go to teach, besides Anchorage, Alaska, in the U.S., was I was in Japan twice to train the U.S. Marine Corps
Oh, nice.
on a military contract. So I even got to visit a Krav Maga studio in Japan. I didn't want to let on that I knew anything, and they were giving me a lecture about Krav Maga's history, and I appreciated
Nice,
it. What I saw
nice.
was not the best Krav Maga in my opinion, but I was appreciative of being invited in, and I wouldn't offend by criticizing.
Yeah. So, do you do or have you trained like a lot of military law enforcement, that type of programming?
We've been lucky enough to do it. On a personal level, I'm very proud of that. A lot of it's pro bono because I believe in giving back,
Hmm.
especially now with the law enforcement community under siege. I will say that there are some cops out there who shouldn't be police officers, but out of the 900,000 cops in the United States, I'm going to say 99.9% of them are really good people. Some of the best people I ever know. What
Hmm.
they do is, in terms of use of force and restraint, diplomacy, is a Sisyphusian task. It is so difficult to restrain somebody under the best of circumstances, or on the worst of circumstances. And unfortunately, I don't want to digress, but the public believes that it's very easy to control somebody. They might have a hypoglossal nerve, they might have something, but people hopped up on whatever they're hopped up on are just angry, are near to pain, and without doing damage, it's very difficult to control somebody.
Yeah.
So, yes, to answer your question, we've trained, at last count, over 250 law enforcement agencies, um, 17 state police agencies, the alphabet soup of
Yep.
American agencies. Got a letter from a director. I'm not going to say who, but I was above and beyond honored to get a letter that we're contributing to U.S.'s security this way.
Nice.
And we really focus on the Graham v. Connor standard, which is objectively reasonable use of force. But that also translates to our civilian training as well. On the military side, again, we've been training all five branches. Fifth one, of course, is the Coast Guard. I've been to some places which I'm not at liberty to talk about, but we've
Hmm.
really talked to some of the most amazing operators in the world from all the branches. We've come to them. Some of them come to us. And again, they're heroes to me, and they literally are heroes from what they've seen and done. And they're consummate professionals. When we deal with the top tier law enforcement and military instructors, these are professionals. They know their craft, and when we are asked to work with them, we're basically showing them maybe a dozen tactics which we think are applicable. It's mutual respect. I don't ever presume to reinvent the wheel, and they're well grounded in what they do. So it's a big part of our training. A lot of it's done pro bono, and we believe in doing it that way.
Mm. Uh, that's yeah,
They
yeah,
will pay,
because
which is always welcome.
yeah,
But
yeah,
we
yeah,
want to give back, and I think that is kind of lacking in American society at this moment. So not that we're setting an example, but it is important.
yeah. No, no, I do agree with that, and because it's like the state of everything and I'm in Canada, it's no different here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is the same, right? The people are not looking favorable upon law enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it almost seems like the way it's set up, it's stacked against the officers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Mm-hmm.
they've got this incredibly hard job that they have to do, without having in a lot of cases proper training.
Yeah, I've been in touch with the RCMP. There's a chance
Yes.
something may happen there eventually. And we've got a wonderful instructions in Saskatchewan. So
Hmm.
Darcy Hallett's work with their local consulary, and we've talked to them a bit too. And I've asked them to show everything we can that is applicable and within the Canadian use of force statutes. But they need our help and they need our support.
Yeah, yeah, because it's the yeah, there's just not enough training, in my opinion, for most of them, unless they're a special unit, right? Where if they're a special unit, that's all they do is train, right? But it's the regular police officers that need it most,
Yeah.
and I do, I it's kudos to you for helping them out,
No, it would be an
and
honor.
your organization.
As you say, it is the average officer who's going to use hands-on more than anybody we know, from civilians defending themselves to military getting involved in a rare hand-to-hand combat confrontation. The police use it every day, and they also do mental Krav Maga
Yeah.
every day. And that's been a big part of my recent research and writing is how, with an amazing skill set, whatever the discipline you've got, can you walk away from somebody who's being a bully or confrontational, or otherwise just being a uncivilized person.
Mhm.
And it all, I think, for every martial artist out there, at one time or another, it's crept into one's mind. Maybe this person ought to be taught a lesson.
Yep.
But the reality of it is, if you teach a bully a lesson, and I'm going to throw out a number, maybe half of them are just going to take the lesson and eschew the lesson. They're not going to think about what they're just getting beaten up or hobbled or whatever else, and they're just going to continue in their ways. So
Mhm.
more often than not, it backfires. So as I said, we've got something we kind of coined de-escalation communication, which is how I am able to walk away from somebody, and I can fill you in on that if it'd be of interest.
Sure.
So I can give you a hypothetical.
Mhm.
With road rage and everything else, which we've done some research on for this book. If somebody were arguing with me in a parking spot situation or something like that, um, I don't know where it happens. If in Pennsylvania, it's what they call a shall issue state, and you could very well be armed. And I'm aware of my whereabouts. But let's assume that they're not armed, and let's say that I can take them. I can really destroy anatomy because I know how to do that. But at the
Mhm.
same time, how do I avoid that situation and yet not walk away feeling that all that training I've done over the years, all of the tactics which I've tried to master, and most of all my ego, my masculinity, whatever it's going to be, is intact. And Rick
Yeah.
taught me this. And the answer, I believe, is to say it was his or her, their lucky day. It's not
Mm.
my lucky day. It's their lucky day that I had the mental fortitude to walk away and think better of the situation.
Yeah, because you almost, if you get into the situation and you completely destroy the person and maybe uh, go further than you expected, you're not going to feel good about yourself. But then if you walk away, you also have that same feeling. So it's lose lose no matter what. But turning it
So
on
well
its
said.
head the way turning it on its head the way you're talking about, and saying, well, they're lucky that they didn't get into the fight with me. I think
Right.
that,
a
yeah,
little bit of ego padding, but
yeah,
as
definitely.
we age, I think we understand it better. And we get some young students. I'm sure you had the same thing, who
Hmm.
want to know if it actually works,
Yep.
and it works. It's been proven. That's what we do. It's what Grandmaster Guidon insists on, that it work. Any tactic work against concerted resistance, and that's a whole other training aspect,
Mhm.
which at a little bit of a more advanced level we have to emphasize. A lot of Krav Maga guys take an issue. I take issue with it myself. If somebody, throws a punch and leaves it dangling there, or simply thinks that a one punch is the end of the attack, who holds a knife out there, with a straight stab, who just stabs
Yeah.
once and leaves
Yeah.
it there for somebody to disarm him, it's not going to happen in all likelihood. So if you don't train against concerted resistance, somebody who's going to try to eviscerate you or
Hmm.
beat you to a pulp, um, it's not effective training in the end. You have
Yeah.
to build up to that level, of course, but you got
Yes, of
to have a
course.
good
Yeah.
training partner. That makes you better.
Yeah, it's like doing a gun disarm, but not taking into consideration the pull reflex. So, um,
Yep. Or taking the gun away, as we see too often, and then redirecting it at the assailant, not having racked, or rather made sure that the weapon is in battery. Seated the magazine,
yeah.
racked the weapon. And I can say, in Canada, one of my very good friends, Nir Maman, who's taught me most of what I know about firearms training,
Hmm.
he's just a superb instructor, and occasionally he runs his own brand of Krav Maga courses too. But if you're going to learn how to disarm somebody, I'll add from the training, you best learn how to use the weapon or discard it, in a safe way. But better to learn to use the weapon.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I always tell tell my students it's just better not to use another person's weapon because you know nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even tell when the last time it was cleaned. So, right, yeah, you definitely have to have the knowledge there. So let's say a new person comes into Krav Maga
Mm-hmm.
and this first time learning. What would you recommend that they focus their energy on um, first? Like, what would be the most important thing that they could learn that's going to help them
Well,
accelerate?
you can look two ways at it. It also depends on the person. If if it's a younger person, maybe long range kicks are in order to use your
Mm-hmm.
longest range preemptive weapon. Maybe somebody who has got a knee or hip issue. Um, the best thing to show them is a 360 defense against a hook punch. It could go either way. You can do it, but it's practical skills that they're going to use right away. Not necessarily I don't know, a choke from behind with a garrote.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to teach something practical, and teach something that will actually work under harrowing circumstances. In other words, it's pressure tested. Um, I might add, one of the great improvements among the many that Chaim Gidon, Grandmaster Gidon, added to the system is against a hook punch. We're all taught a 360-degree defense. So it's usually this. I can't really do it. My shoulder's still healing.
Yep.
But when we do it, we step off the line, which means I'm not standing here. I'm moving away. And what that allows is a smaller person to defend against a very powerful hook punch. But it's also building the defense for an overhead stab or a hook stab or even a slash. So when we've got the time to work with somebody, we teach them to get off the line with that technique. However, large, small, male, female, doesn't matter. For military and law enforcement, there's not a lot of time. We teach the basic bursting, which most Krav Maga people know, but it's very difficult to get the timing right. As you know from your training, you have to get that timing right on the backswing, not the forward swing. It has to be back when you're coming at it rather than going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're late. And so again, when I say what to teach them, when you say what to teach them, I think good minds think alike is fundamentals, good movement.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And um, let's see. So when they're learning,
Mm-hmm.
right, and they come in, they do their first session with you guys. Um, what you're saying is it's number one, it's one movement. You try to get like one movement to encompass a whole bunch of defenses, right?
No, that's a very good approach.
Yeah.
A straight kick to preempt any kind of upper body attack. Ultimately, it'll end up with a knife defense, stepping off the line, sliding off the line. Um, something that they're going to feel. The biggest thing is confidence, because at the
Right.
end of the day, I'm a much better teacher than I'm a businessman. I'll be the first one to admit that. But if I'm good at either, the idea is to have somebody come away with a little bit of confidence, not overconfidence, but
Mm-hmm.
having enjoyed what he or she did, and we want them to come back. So if
Yeah.
you're showing something that's empowering, that makes sense intuitively, that maybe builds on something that he or she has already done, but is instinct based, so what you do instinctively do
Mm-hmm.
faster. It all adds to the mix of a successful lesson and series of lessons coming down the pike, and ultimately a student.
Nice. Now, you have a Krav Maga organization here in the U.S. as well that
We
that you
do, we
run,
do. I
or
run it with my great partners. I mentioned Don and Ronaldo from Cherry Hill, and
Mhm.
it's called the Israeli Krav Maga Advancement Program, or ICMAP.
Okay.
And the idea is simply to help people who have a Krav Maga base get better.
Okay.
It doesn't matter who you train with. We're not critical. We do it our way, and if you like it, great. Presumably, that's why you've come to us. Um, I again am the honor of working under Grandmaster Gidon. Um, Hands down, the best training you can get is in Israel. And
Hmm.
when the opportunity presents itself, I always try to send people to Chaim's courses. And he teaches his courses every July, the first 2 weeks of July, instructor courses. You can also go for the first week. So yes, we have it in the U.S. Chaim in the past was able to come and help us with that. Sometimes logistics force us to do some training on our own. And when we do these programs, there's always an internal component to it where we have our own students going through it. So even if we didn't have anybody from outside, the majority of the people going through it are often our own students to make our own instructors to help with the the program. You can never have too many good instructors. I think you'll attest to that.
Yeah, definitely. You need a lot of good instructors. And you also have an online training platform as well, right?
Yeah, I'm either the only skilled instructor or / idiot in the world to put out 500 videos in a comprehensive program, and that took it really took over 10 years to do it.
Right.
Some of them are from the DVD sets I put out, but about half the material is brand new.
Okay.
And it's thank you for asking. It's organized in 2 ways: by belt, why we test for the belts. I don't give belts out online, though, I must add. And the other one is by topic. So, for example, if you want to learn upper body defenses and then you want to learn specifically against a hook punch, you would be able to scroll down the 5 or 6 defenses on there. I don't recall exactly how many, with variations, and you'd be able to learn it by level. In other words, here's the yellow belt defense against a hook punch, 360. Here's the orange belt defense, which can involve a spin into a choke. Here's the green belt defense, which is late, or you're inverting like this and tucking, or you're using a double with a chop. So that's the way it's built out, and each defense builds on the other. The other way to look at it is you can go through the belt curriculum, all the emphasized belt material. And it's paradoxical because the original curriculum, which I have of EMES, was very short. It wasn't that the curriculum was short. It's just that all the variations were not expanded in it. And
Right.
so what Grandmaster Dunn has done is built out that curriculum with EME's formal blessing to include ground survival, as I mentioned, some additional takedown variations, and a lot of ground survival, including dealing with people who how to break your limbs, how to choke you, how to wrench your shoulder, how to pin you so that others can descend on you. So there's many different things. Some weapon defenses have also been improved and things like that. But ultimately, it comes down to what I said in the beginning of our discussion. It comes down to basic movements. You have to build it correctly.
Yeah. And is the platform geared towards the student or to the instructor, or both?
Well, it's both, because one of the more important things I believe, from an instructor standpoint, is to teach a technique. You better know the technique.
Yep.
And one should not teach anything that you're not intimately familiar with. And I know, as I explained to our instructors, that becoming an instructor makes you a better student. Because if you can teach the material, you really need to know it. And it leads to more questions. It leads to, variations on it. It leads to expanding on it. And, I think we have Grandmaster Gidon. He's my exemplar of Krav Maga, his sons too. And Chaim teaches Chaim. Somebody wanted to know, where did Chaim learn all that ground stuff? I said, Chaim teaches Chaim. Because he watches it, he understands how bodies move, he tests it. Nothing that he puts in the curriculum he hasn't tried or done against resistance. So
Right.
it's all tested in that way.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, one of my instructor's good friends, Igal Arbiv, has a knife scar on his arm from working with a real knife. Not advised, but it happened. And a knife got put through his arm. One of the other things that happened to Igal was attacked by a group of people in a hallway, and Igal's as tough as they come. Chaim's best fighters. And originally he had learned Krav Maga against a knife defense to defend an attack by punching past the guy. Well, that's what he did. He recovered and punched the guy in the face, but not before he could have really been in trouble, because there was multiple people. So from that experience, Chaim said, hey, you know what? It's not good to punch past somebody's head. What we have to learn is control, so that we can hit him, but not damage him. Then you need to be able to do the control and actually, work with pads at full coat, full strike makot strikes.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Where you train so much that it becomes the instinct, and if you're punching past someone, then you end up under stress, punching past someone, And there's a similar story about a police officer
Yep.
handing a gun back to a bad guy because of the way he was practicing his disarms.
Correct. It happened. Yep. And
Yeah.
so that's why, again, when we practice firearm or weapon stuff, we resort to, holding the weapon in offensive capability, breaking the drill, and then handing it back. Or you
Mm-hmm.
can put it on the ground. But by the same token, I'm not a big fan of putting it on the ground, although some people really like to do it because you might do that too. Take it
Yeah.
away, put it on the ground, and then step back. So you got to break the drill. You got to make sure that it's a reset on the mind, that they've gone through tapping, racking, and putting the gun on the guy. Or, of course, if you have your own, use your own weapon, as you so wisely suggested. So yeah, you got to train to the threat, and you got to train in a real capacity.
And so, so what would a typical training session look like at one of the studios, or the recommended way of training? Do you use a lot of scenario based training, or is it just
We do.
repetition of the? Go
No,
ahead.
we do, and we often will also, there's a standing rule that you can be ambushed at any time with the advanced instructors to be on your guard, but that also means they got to use control. Because, for example, if my wife came up behind me and hugged me, I don't want to do a bear hug defense and then injure her. She'll kill me after that.
Yeah.
But the whole point is that we tailor the class to who's there. But in general, I believe that you can, in an hour session, depending how many hours you teach, you can really get 3 to 4 related techniques down with the
Mhm.
necessary reps and variations and scenario training. I'm not a big fan of doing push-ups and sit-ups and burpees and that sort of stuff during class time.
Right.
It's definitely a good thing to do, but because I guess my background, I've got too much to teach, and I personally don't like it turning into an exercise fad. And I'm curious to see. Well, I'm I'm somewhat pessimistic about the way Krav Maga might turn out in the end as a fad, and I've written about this. And
Mm.
it's not because criticizing people with lots of students in the schools. Do what's good for you, but ultimately, I don't believe in teaching people or putting them through exercise programs because you don't have enough material to teach. That's my issue.
Okay.
So that's the way I look at it. We don't do a lot of push-ups, sit-ups, and that kind of stuff. It's all fighting, pad work, and conditioning, 2 against 1, 3 against 1. So the conditioning element is very much there, but it's
Yeah.
doing real fight movements.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because if you're wasting your time doing the push-ups and the burpees,
No, it's all
but
good, but just do
yeah,
it with
no,
some
no,
pad.
I mean, like in a
Yeah,
like
some pads.
you want to be conditioned, but I mean
Yeah,
that part of class time could have been better spent on more uh, repetitions of the actual self-defense.
we're on the same page.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying that burpees and stuff
No,
are bad.
we got it.
I know there's people out there going, "Yes, I'm never doing burpees again." It's no, that's
No,
not
being
what
in
I'm.
shape,
Yeah,
the best thing before I had to have some hip repairs was I was on a treadmill, I happened to be wearing a Krav Maga t-shirt, huffing away. I was a sprinter. I was pretty fast in my day, I suppose, but not for long distance. And somebody said to me, "Hey, don't you do that fighting thing?" And I said, yeah, that's got the best defense going on right now is like huffing and puffing. I'm running away in the opposite direction fast.
yeah,
Being in shape, there's no substitute.
yeah. Can't hit you if you're not there, right? All right, awesome. So, where do you see like the future of your organization going? Like, what is the goal? Like you have a book coming out. Do you know when when is the when does it come out?
I
First
do.
off,
It's August. Unfortunately, it's a really long book. Probably the best one we've done. I thank everybody helped me again. The publisher ran into some printing issues, so it's been
okay,
delayed with COVID and everything. It's still an
yeah,
issue getting stuff out, transportation, the whole thing. And I believe that one of the printers was in Canada, so it made
nice,
cross border stuff, all that stuff. Um, but on a personal basis, with an organization, I hope we continue to grow. I can only hope to teach in Grandmaster Gidon's path. We're not all things to all people. We do not give out, belts. We've got somebody in New Jersey who's buying a belt a year, black belt a year, and putting out not so good stuff.
mm,
Showing people strangling them online, trying to break necks. He doesn't know what he's doing, thank goodness. But it's that kind of thing that I wonder about the whole Krav Maga world. If the Krav Maga world will purge people like that, and say
Right.
he doesn't represent us, or embrace that kind of charlatanism. So what I'm saying is that it's not a personal thing, but I don't want to see Krav Maga turn into a belt factory. It has a lot of
Hmm.
it. We don't want to go that route. I understand there's a business and people want gratification, but my point is that whatever school you do, whatever the requirements are, to just do the fundamentals well, to really
Yeah.
understand the basics, and then you can advance. Because if you don't understand the basics, I repeat ad nauseum, you can't advance with what we do.
Yeah. And in the end, it's, you know, having a belt factory doesn't necessarily develop someone's skill in defending themselves, and
So
that's really what we want. I know I would feel horrible if one of my students was in a situation where they needed to defend themselves and then couldn't,
yeah,
right? Because they're coming to us for that. We're the professional. We need to make sure that that's what they get out of it. Um, so, do you think that that's partly because a lot of Kravists or Krav Maga studios are former like karate studios and taekwondo studios, and they just switched over to Krav Maga? Do you think that's part of the problem, that they're not getting?
it could be. It really depends on the person.
Mhm.
It's just some of the programs um, are meant to advance people, because if you don't advance the instructor, they can't advance their students.
Right.
It makes money, and I just I have a slogan, because not all Krav Maga is the same. And again, I
Mhm.
don't plan. I am not the best. And clearly, I'm going to state that I am not the best. I've been trained by the best, and there are very few people in the world who would argue that Chaim Bidon or his son Ohad and his other son Noam, a couple other guys that Chaim teaches, are fantastic practitioners. They're not going to. They're
Right.
not. Those who know in the old Krav Maga world will not equivocate that statement. Where it's become in other countries and everything else, I have my own opinions. I have written about them. I don't want to seem like sour grapes. I just love the system. I believe in it. And I don't want to be all things to all people. I can't be. By definition, I'm doing things correctly. Um, and I'll give you one example that happened in Israel in the late 80s, early 90s as well. Um, a group of American black belts came to Netanya to train with the Israeli black belts.
Mhm.
In typical fashion, and these Israelis, they're all military, and they're fighters. Thank goodness.
Mhm.
Well, the Americans had their heads handed to them. They just could not compete. They didn't understand Retzef. They didn't understand proper movements. They just didn't get it because of the training they had received. So EMU was there, and this was an international crisis because American black belts were being floored. So Chaim wisely said, "Hey, why don't you, to the Israelis and the Americans, take off your belts?" What are the Israelis? And then Chaim said to EMU, "Hey, have our orange belts work with them." And the orange belt Israelis still got the better of the Americans, because at the orange belt level, in a serious Krav Maga system, you ought to be able to defend against any kind of typical attack. And you ought to have the idea of continuous combat motion, which is Retzef. This
Mhm.
is particular and central about what Chaim teaches.
Interesting.
It's inside information. You got it
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. There we go. So it would. That definitely, hopefully, that those Americans that were part of that group, that it was a humbling
They were humbled.
experience.
They had
That it
no
was a
choice.
humble,
They
yeah,
were humbled.
good. So hopefully it was humbling, and then they realized, okay, we really have to.
I was
Get
humbled
it.
when I went to Israel. I had been training for 3 years privately and thought I was, in the middle belt grade. And Chaim, with all of his infinite wisdom, said we begin from the beginning. And
Yeah.
I knew not to challenge, to learn, and I learned,
Mhm.
and I started
Yeah.
from the beginning. Ronaldo Rossi, my only one I've been honored to give a black belt, although he really earned it in Israel. Um, he began from the beginning. He was with another organization. I said, Ronaldo, you've got great passion for this, but we need to start from the beginning. And
Mhm.
he did. He really learned everything.
Yeah.
So he's featured in the books. He's featured in the videos, and he's very good. really tops.
No, I definitely look forward to your new book.
Thank you.
We'll have to do. Is it going to be on where the usual channels like Amazon, Barnes and
Yeah.
Noble, all that stuff? Uh,
If you're interested, I definitely we'll have another conversation once it comes out.
yeah, like once it comes out, because you said there's a lot more. That's a long book.
It is.
That there's a lot more in this. So, and this is kind of like the culmination of, I don't know how many years of
It
development.
really is. It's going back. Let's say it's going to go back 26 years, and
Yeah.
it's interesting because it's really combines both self defense, dealing with a situation from a negative position. In other words, you're unprepared, you're caught
Mm-hmm.
unaware, ambushes, that sort of thing, multiple opponents, a lot of good 2 against 1 in between cars on stairwells, that kind of thing, and fighting, which is where you're both prepared. Fighting is illegal, of course, but you're dealing with a trained combatant, and that's why some of the like a sidekick defense of the knee against you is covered. In other words, the fighting aspects when you're dealing with somebody who actually is trained.
Yeah, because the bad guys are more skilled now, right?
And then some.
Yeah, so we have to be able to adapt to that, and I think that's one of the good things about real Krav Maga is that it adapts as we go. It's not stuck in doing techniques from 30, 40 years ago. It should have evolved with, with the times, right?
Well, true. And one thing to think about too is that hair pull defenses, for example.
Mm-hmm.
There's an older one where you clamp your hands on your head and you work with it, but we don't really teach that because it's somewhat strength dependent. So we just
Yeah.
attack. But think about when it came out, 70s, 80s. Big hair was the thing. A lot of
Yeah.
hair pulling going on. Now, if you grab your hair, my hair by design, it's really hard to grab hair. Obviously, people with longer hair, men with longer hair, women with longer hair, it's still very relevant. But things change a bit. It's the same thing with weaponry too. It has changed. Knife is a knife is a knife, but there are a lot of knives that can be sequestered very easily now, or pulled out. Gravity blades, things like that, which didn't exist
Mm-hmm.
when it first began. When Amy first developed this, it was against revolvers, and the danger of defending against a revolver, if you don't catch that hammer, it's been proven that cylinder is going to discharge, and your hand is going to get injured.
Yeah.
So, with modern semi-automatics, although they can discharge, they've got probably twice the capacity often as the old revolvers. The disarm is actually safer because you're actually going to jam the weapon by not allowing it to cycle properly and things like that. Now, with active shooter, things have also changed. But it has to evolve. For example, the whole IDF curriculum, because they've those elements of it that deal with the long gun, they've adapted the Tavor, which I've shot, and is an amazing compact weapon, but it doesn't have the barrel length of the old or the M4s, or even the FALs that they used, in the 67 and 73 wars. Those things were like spears, very, very long weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So defending against a bayonet thrust, or defending against an edge weapon attack, which is very often the case in Israel, is a preferred method of terrorist attack with an edge weapon, has had to change. I've shown some of that. We've developed some stuff that's applicable, but the very short barrel, and I've shown some American agencies, one in particular that uses an MP5, and I forget the name of it, but it's a 5.7 millimeter round. It's a very special gun they use. How to use that against an edge weapon attack if you're actually putting rounds into the subject, then you can put rounds into them. So as you said, it's got to change. It's got to evolve, and there's no two doubts about it.
Yeah. Oh. Well, that's so. This has been an awesome conversation, right? Because like you've got a wealth of knowledge, right? You've trained with the best in the world, and the Krav that you learned comes from a battle tested area. It's not some guy in a gym theorizing things, right? And I think you've contributed a lot to the Krav community, and I want to say thank you. Keep that up. and I definitely would like to interview you again after your book comes out.
Absolutely.
But if someone wanted to get involved in Krav Maga now, or to train with your organization, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can contact us directly.
Mm-hmm.
They can contact me directly at David at Israeli Krav. It's all one word.com. Also, I would encourage them, and I'm not selling here, to take the 20 free lessons on masteringkravmaga.com.
Mm-hmm.
The 20 free lessons, no obligation, anything like that, just to see it. And oftentimes I tell people to take a look at what we do, not necessarily because I'm recruiting them, but given it's the original organization, we've got a lot of faith in what we do. He or she can make an informed decision if they're thinking about a Krav Maga school. What is legitimate Krav Maga? And I'm not the only one. There's people, a guy in particular in New York, Ron Mizrahi, who I respect. Not the same, we don't do the same, but I respect his Krav Maga. So I'm not saying I'm the only one, but that they can understand what is legitimate Krav Maga versus what is sort of a subpar form of it, or not it at all.
Right.
So Mastering Krav Maga Online, that's a good way to get some lessons in,
Mm-hmm.
and you can contact us from that. And I really appreciate your time, and I wish you luck in reopening in Canada. It's tough right now. Stick with it.
Yeah, it has been tough. We'll be fine, I'm sure. There seems to be a lot more interest in Krav Maga right now,
and there may well be in the future, given everything.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much for your time, and feel free to contribute to our community at any point in time. I know everybody would love to hear from you.
I will do that. Thank you so much, Paul.
All right. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Be good. Speak to you soon. Quite honored. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.